Well, hi, everyone. We're grateful for our viewers today for another episode of Continence Chat. I'm here with my lovely colleague, Susie Fox. And in a minute here, we're going to dig in with one of our guests today, Margo Tucker, who is out of the New Jersey area. Margo is an Aging Life Care Association advocate. She's a licensed social worker. She's a geriatric care manager. She's an author, but she founded Tucker Associates, and Tucker Senior Life Care. And really, we're going to dig in a little bit about guides that she has created to help people who are taking care of loved ones with all types of everything related to aging. So you can find her on several social media sites. And I had the pleasure of crossing paths with Margo at the recent Aging Life Care Association meeting that was held up, in Boston, maybe a month or two ago. So without further ado, Margo, thank you for spending your time with us today. And maybe if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your passion for older adults and how you decided to transition a little bit into founding your own business.
Thank you so much, Deanna and Susie. It's so great to be here. So basically, I really got involved in geriatric care management about 24 years ago. It was after I had been a social worker at Mount Sinai Hospital, discharge planning in my previous life. So I'm a medical social worker. And after 9/11, I just felt spiritually lost and really wanted to be able to give back. And I knew that my area of expertise in aging would be a beautiful way to give back. And I actually I decided, well, step one would be to network and get myself back into the community of, I didn't even know what a care manager was at the time, back into the community. And I went to a conference and there was someone there, Barbara London, who gave me a big hug. And she said to me, there are two kinds of social workers. One is a psychotherapist, the other is a care manager, and you're a care manager. And they hired me on the spot. I skipped away. I'm a care manager, not even really knowing what a care manager was. So that was on a Friday. And that Monday, I went to the office and quickly learned about the beautiful job of being a geriatric care manager. I am the boots on the ground. I am the one who helps my clients navigate all of the challenges of aging. You name it, I've navigated it. And always my goal is to give my client the tools to thrive based on whatever they're facing, which, is perfect when I would say about, Seni. That's one of the tools that I use to help my clients manage incontinency. So, those were my goals, and I started working. And after quite some time, I decided, and my mentor said to me, Margo, it's time to start your own business. So I started my own company, Tucker Senior Life Care, and that was 15 years ago. And it's been nothing short of miraculous ever since. I mean, incredible clients, incredible success. Really, again, giving them tools, tools to manage. And since then, I decided now, more recently, to take a little bit of a different turn, and that is to create the professional guides that I've been working on for the past year. And I decided that, to be able to share with people the what to do and the how to do it was of utmost important. And here I was helping and affecting, people's lives in my clients and their families and all that, but I wanted it to be bigger. I wanted to give people, the tools to navigate. And I created I have, I think, 10 now, guides. And that's kind of the direction, that I ended up going into.
Wow. I know you're a hoarding disorder specialist, and I'm just curious, what is a hoarding disorder specialist? How big is this issue? And how does someone know if their loved one or even themselves, right? Maybe they just think, oh, I keep a lot of stuff. Like, how do you figure out what's reality versus what's a real challenge?
So I am a hoarding disorder specialist. I was trained by the Hoarding Disorder Institute, started by Marcy Cooper, that's located in New York. And with that training, it really gave me the ability to understand what the disease is about. Now, hoarding, the prevalence of hoarding is actually very frightening, because right now they say about 5 or 6% of our population have hoarding disorder. That's a big number to begin with. But just knowing what the disease is, this is a disease of remorse, shame, and guilt. No one is announcing that they have this disorder or that they're struggling with content in their apartments. So I think that number is more at like an 8-9% of our population. And what differentiates hoarding disorder from collecting, from clutter, things like that, is that hoarding disorder is a psychiatric response to trauma. That's where it comes from. It's a psychiatric disorder. So understanding that it's psychiatric says that you just can't approach it in a simple way. It's very complex. And it's not only psychiatric, but it's the borderline of when all of the maybe, items or clutter and things in your home, in your car, that they're interfering with your life. Someone who's a collector may have an abundance of, little miniature statues that they love to collect. They may have 500 of them in their apartment, and there may be clutter from it, but it's not interfering in their day-to-day. That is the difference. That's where something becomes more of a hoarding disorder than someone who has a lot of clutter, in their home. Again, psychiatric. It's psychiatric. Go ahead, Susie.
So, Margo, what does that look like when it's actually interfering with their life? How would a adult child recognize that, maybe if it's going on with their parent?
Okay, so one of the big things is that people become recluse. They are staying in their home. They're not allowing anybody into their home. That would kind of be the first sign. I have many clients' families that are shocked when they walk into their parents', home that they haven't been in a few years, and they knew there was kind of clutter, but it's so overwhelming, very overwhelming.
And I'm thinking too, for people that live up, in the northern part of the country where the winters are tough and so forth, is it possible, right? You could run into someone who has a situation where they have this disorder of hoarding, but now they're actually putting things that are covering, they live alone, and they're covering their heating systems. And you could run into situations where they're freezing or carbon monoxide. I mean, you could go on and on with ugly ripple effects.
And appliances aren't able to be used, and bathrooms aren't able to be used. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Deanna, because that's one of the approaches that I take. Is instead of taking a clean out approach, I'm coming into your home to clean you out, unless you're in a situation where it is so unsafe, they're being evicted, because of it, then you may have to do a quick clean out. But if you don't have to do a quick, immediate clean out as an emergency, you take the approach of harm reduction. Then that means looking on the stove. Are there all papers on the stove? Are there sweaters in the oven? That's where people store things. You'd be surprised. Kind of looking at the harm reduction first and foremost, when you're approaching, anyone who has this disorder. That is really the best way to approach it.
Sure.
But
And
it's unsafe, they can become very unsafe and risk the lives and the safety of people around them if they're in an apartment building. as I've had many clients, their hoarding disorder spills out into the other apartments, the vermin, the bugs, the odors, things like that.
So how do you begin that conversation? Do you begin it with the family or friends that have contacted you because they're worried?
Mm-hmm.
And what would the language be when you're approaching the person that is suffering from this disorder?
So if the family reaches out to me, yes, I start with the family. I had a case recently, a 35-year-old girl who you would never know that she had hoarding disorder. She would get dressed and go to work, and she worked in a bank and nobody knew it. And then she'd leave work and she would go and she would buy clothing that made her feel beautiful, because her injury, her trauma was that she was abused as a child. She was not loved. She never felt pretty or worthy. So she would leave her house, leave work, and instead of going home where the clutter was up to your waist, literally, but the clutter was filled with purchases of things. And that, again, was her psychiatric response. It's not just buying one dress or 4 dresses, it's having 1,000 all around your home, right? And she would put on something pretty, dress, makeup, jewelry, feel nice for the moment, and then it would just get thrown on the floor. And she lived in remorse, shame, and guilt. It was, really, really hard. So there I started with the family, and I worked with the father for almost a year just to get him to a place of understanding. It's very hard to grasp that it's a psychiatric disorder and that someone you love may have a psychiatric or mental health challenge like this. So that took a year working with the father. I worked with the mother as well, but she never could come to the understanding of what was happening. She just kept going back. Well, why can't she just clean up? Why can't she just clean up? Just tell her to, I keep telling her to clean up. She couldn't grasp that is not reality to somebody, and that was just noise, to her daughter. So really, it's helping family and educating family and getting them to a place of understanding of really what's happening. And then the approach is very gentle, and the approach is a poker face. I walk into situations that if I could react, I would react. Oh my goodness, I can't believe this person's living like this. This is terrible. I mean, oh my God, they can't even get into their kitchen or their bathroom, and she's 35 and like, oh, and the bathroom is just filthy, and just how is she showering and all of it. That would be my normal reaction. But when they open the door, you have 3 seconds to connect. And because they don't trust to begin with, very paranoid, don't trust. So you really have a couple of seconds in that moment, and you just I come in very, very gently. And then, kind of start a conversation. What is this like for you? Tell me about your day-to-day, and then we start talking about what it's like for them. That's a great question. I think I love that question. What is it like for you? Yeah. I ask my clients that regardless of what they're facing, right? It's a very nice, open-ended, safe question.
What kind of responses do you get?
Honestly, many times it takes a little while, but an incredible sense of relief. Someone understands me. Someone knows what I'm going through. And someone's here to support me who understands. They're not going to tell me to clean my room, right? It's much more than that. It's working together. There's a lot of steps to take to get somebody to a place of safety, right? But that's the most important thing. So then once I gain the trust, in those first few minutes, then I approach the harm reduction. Would you consider at least removing the papers from the stove, because that's really a fire hazard, and I would never want anything to happen to you or to all of your belongings here. You could lose everything, right?
Mhm.
Connecting it to their things that are so important to them.
Mhm. Do you find, Margo, I'm curious where you mentioned it's a psychiatric disease. Do you find that people relapse? Like, have you had situations where you go in and you get them to a place of safety, whatever that looks like, but unfortunately, fast forward a year later, they're back to square one? Or do you find there's good rates of outcomes?
The only way to have a good rate of an outcome is to set up a lot of things. There, like, a lot needs to be set up, and the first thing I set up is the psychiatric support.
Mm.
Or Clutterers Anonymous. What an incredible group that is, especially for my clients, where it's a safe space, and it's based on the 12-step theory that they use in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it helps people release the resentments, release the anger, release these things so that they can get to a better place. But without everything set up and constant checking back in, the recidivism rate, 99%.
Wow.
99%.
Wow.
So the
Interesting.
answer is yes, but I try to set up enough ongoing support.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just cleaning out. This is so much more than that. It's coming to terms with what it all means to them, right? So that's kind of the approach that I take when I come into somebody's home who has hoarding disorder. And just, I want to quickly say, I'm really trying to change the narrative, because so often I say a hoarder, right?
Yeah.
Really a person with hoarding disorder. Calling them a hoarder just is not the kind way to speak. And I've been catching myself. It's not easy when you're used to saying something all the time. But even when you say to somebody that, you are a person with a disorder called hoarding disorder, that comes across much different to that person than you're a hoarder.
Yeah, I agreed. You're speaking our language, because we when it comes to incontinence, we do not speak in terms of an incontinent person, but we say a person who is living with incontinence. And you're right. It's just that it's a dignity, it's a respect, it's a human element of we're all people. Let's not label the type of person. It's a condition, or so forth. So yeah, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, because you have so many good guides that you're offering. Susie and I work with a lot of senior living communities, as I know you do too, Margo. But one of the guides that you have is a guide to assisted living, how to choose with confidence. Susie actually has written a blog that's on Lori LeBay's dementia map.
Okay.
Because Susie, her mom was in a community, and so she shared some things to look for. But I was just curious, from your opinion, for people always want to know that don't know, right? What are one or two or three top things that if someone is now considering leaving their home, going into senior living, what should they be looking for?
Mm-hmm. So I take a different approach than most. I encourage my clients to just first, don't set up a tour. Just go over to the building. Trust me, from just the walking from the parking lot into the building, you will probably encounter people who are sitting outside and start conversation. Oh, do you live here? How do you like living here? What are the benefits? What don't you like about living here? Kind of walk into the lobby. They'll let you look around. Your gut will tell you immediately if this feels like it could be a potential place for either you or your loved one. Always start there. Then if it feels like it could be, then you do the tour. Then you get the information, right? And you do that in a couple of places. It's really important. It's like when kids are looking at colleges, you know, they go and they walk around the campus and they look at, you know, 10 schools. Where do they want to apply to? It's kind of the same concept.
Yeah.
Instead of committing, because the minute you sign up for the tour, which are wonderful and important and of course helpful, but it changes the dynamic for you. You know, there's already a sense of commitment to this place, and they're going to try to pull you in because that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right? But I will say most places I find are very honest that if it doesn't feel like a right fit for somebody, they seem more focused on what's best for that person, not necessarily coming into their building as a market, you know, from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that approach. That, you know, years ago, I was at some networking group, and I have all the respect for this particular nurse. She owned 3 assisted living communities. They were smaller. I think they were 16 or 18 bed communities, but she gave a talk and it always stuck with me. And I thought, oh, I like you because you're very down to earth and real. But one of the things she shared during her talk was that when they have people coming for tours, she will say to the family, you know, truth be told, mom or dad may fall here. That's reality. We're going to do everything in our power to keep mom or dad safe. But just like any of us that live in our homes, you might trip on the steps one day. It could happen. And she said, in another thing, we try to make our meals nutritious. We try to make meals. But you know what? Is mom going to have a meal that she doesn't really like? Probably. And it was just her whole approach of reality that I was like, oh, if my mom was in the area, I would be like, go over there. They're real, you know, versus staging a tour of everything's nicey nice. And it's not, I'm big into reality. So you're speaking my language again. I appreciate you, Margo.
And I love that because many people have a false sense of security that if I put my loved one into an assisted living, they won't fall. They won't need to go to the ER. They won't get hurt. You know, it's assisted living. You know, nobody's on top of you 24/7. In assisted living, you need to be fairly independent, you know, or dependent. It's the fall risk, the people that ambulate, you know, that are the high fall risks. Those are the hardest people to manage in an assisted living. That's just the reality. But they do their best. They do their best. And there's, you know, I did guides on fall prevention and fall recovery. So there's tons of things to do to set it up, you know, that hopefully whatever you're setting up will negate a fall or lessen an injury from a fall.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that, how medical professionals will tell us if they have fallen once, there's a chance that this is going to repeat itself within the next, I don't know if it's 6 months or a year. And your fall care recovery guide, what does that entail?
Well, my fall care recovery guide is actually for the moment first that somebody falls. It literally has a lot of ways to get somebody off the ground. It starts there. And then from there, it goes into if it's a fall with injury. So how do you navigate the emergency room? How do you navigate the hospital? How do you find a rehab? What does Medicare cover? Have a full understanding of how to navigate what you do next. And then when someone gets to rehab, what you do. You know, you ask for a care plan meeting within the first week that somebody's there. You want the staff to have a chance to get to know your loved one. But then after that, you request, you know, I recommend that you request a care plan meeting to sit down with all of the professionals in the building. And I do that for assisted living as well. It doesn't matter what facility you're going into, but if you're going into any kind of facility, whether it be a hospital, a nursing home, rehab, assisted living, then I always recommend within like a week of admission or so, you sit down with the team and go through how things are going. What are some of our goals? How are we going to reach them? You know, things like that. What's the care plan? What's the plan here? How are we going to manage incontinency? Because that's it's a big concern.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some places that won't take you if you are incontinent. So
Interesting. On the assisted living side.
no, that's more in the end. I'm sorry. Assisted living, I have had situations with fecal incontinency problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I misspoke. It's more independent living. Those buildings that are like independent living with assisted living, I'm talking about not just going to an apartment building, but some of those buildings. Yeah, I've had issues with clients who are incontinent. They want them to leave. I had a woman who would always soil the same chair. You know, she'd go out every day, and she would soil the same chair. And I wish I knew about Seni then. I didn't. That was 20 something years ago. But and I had to move her out of the independent living. She couldn't stay there anymore.
Yeah. We had a scenario, Susie. It was you that told the story, right? Without using names, but wasn't there a gentleman that, was it assisted or independent, but he was going to be asked to leave, and then he started using Seni, and it was beyond even incontinence. He started taking care of his other hygiene issues or whatever. I know you can tell it better than I.
Yeah, no, he was he had a rough life to begin with, and finally got into a position where he was in an assisted living, doing well except for incontinence issues. And wouldn't shower, you know, which is, I think, a common concern. And the care team that was coming into the assisted living, they were not staff there, but they were extra, introduced him to the Seni products, introduced him to the cleansing cream, and he listened to them. He started using the products and started showering and taking care of himself. And they were about to boot him out, and it actually saved him from having to go through that trauma of being asked to leave. So
how amazing.
Yeah, great end of the story.
Yeah. But because your products are so good, and there's no leakage, you know, if you use them appropriately and you size them appropriately. And I learned something great on your website that I didn't know, is that whenever you take out an incontinence product out of the packaging, you're supposed to pull it and stretch it back out a little bit, because when it's shipped, it totally gets flattened, right? So that, you know, the side, you know, where it keeps the, you know, urine in may not fit securely because it's been misshaped through transit and packaging. I thought that was fascinating. I never knew that, and I'm glad that I learned that today when I just took a quick look at the website, you know.
We do a lot of product training for caregivers, whether they're in assisted living, or we work with a lot of skilled health facilities too, or rehabs or so forth. But we always share, or we call it activating the brief, where we want people to really open it up, flip it in half, lift the leak guards. The leak guards, you have to, it takes less than a second, but you need to pop them up to have the products. We always say it's the little things that are the big things that help reduce leakage and other, you know, negative clinical outcomes. So, well, Margo, this has been, boy, Susie, is it me, or am I finding we might have to rebrand down the road from Continence Chat? You know, anything longer is not a chat in 30 minutes to maybe Continence Talk.
I have more to say.
I know. I feel like we could really, you know, go on for hours. But how, Margo, do people find your guides? What's the best way for them to find your guides?
Thank you. My guides are on my website at margotucker.com. They're affordable. They are chock full of information. Everything, like I said, I've learned in 30 years of doing this business and being a medical social worker. It's all in there. So thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking my next guide is, of course, going to be an incontinency guide. And maybe we can partner together and pull things together, because when I have a client who has incontinency, I have a care plan that I follow, right? And my first step is always a bladder journal. The first thing to do is to start a bladder journal. You want to really be measuring and looking at your fluid intake, your urination times, and the quality of the urination. Is it a full flow? Is it a small flow? Kind of looking at that. And then any episodes of leakage. And when you start tracking it, you can start recognizing patterns. And it's in recognition of those patterns that you can really be more equipped to know how to manage incontinency, your incontinency. So I would love us to get together and do something, maybe, you know.
We're very collaborative in nature. So we certainly, when you get to that point, let's, we'll circle back before them. But yeah, are we open to exploring? For sure. We're always open to exploring good relationships. So you bring a lot of, obviously 30 years of experience, but a plethora of information. So thank you for being our guest. And Susie, do you have any parting words for Margo?
I just appreciate, first of all, meeting you and then learning, Margo, you really are the go-to for navigating all things aging. And I could see how important your services are, helping families with crisis intervention and getting on the right path for help and restoring a healthy life. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me today. It was really a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And like you said, I could keep talking to you guys for another hour. There's a lot to say.
There is. Well, we keep saying some folks have come back for round 2. So we're, that may be another, you bring good information, which is wonderful. So
I'll get ready for round 2.
There you go. I like it. So, yeah. Well, thanks to our viewers for listening today. And we always appreciate it. We appreciate you, Margo. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.